Welcome to the Songwriters Across Texas podcast. This state has a lot to offer, and music is one of its greatest exports. On this podcast, we get to know songwriters through their stories and hear some of their music. Today, we're at Arlyn Studios, and my guest is Phil Hurley. I'm Karl Anderson, and this is the Songwriters Across Texas podcast. He grew up in Potsdam, New York, on the Canadian border near Montreal, into a great community of music. Phil Hurley really liked growing up there. There were good clubs and good record stores, and in the house, his older brother of 5 years, Steve, was playing guitar. They started their first band when Phil was only 8. Over the next 9 years, the band became the Gigolo Aunts, a name based on a Syd Barrett song. From the start, it was something out of a movie. At only 17, at their first gig in New York City, they opened up for Soul Asylum, and from that gig alone, they got a record deal with Coyote Records in Hoboken. Soon they had a major label deal with RCA, and they toured with the Lemonheads, the Counting Crows, and the Cranberries, to name a few. They had hits here in America, as well as England and Japan. They recorded music for films like That Thing You Do, Swimming with Sharks, and the title track to the Dumb and Dumber soundtrack. They played on Conan and MTV. After a 10-year run, he became a guitar pro for hire. He's done stints with Tracy Bonham, Hal Ketchum, and Jimmy LaFave. In 2009, he started the South Austin Moonlighters with Lonnie Trevino and Josh Z, and he had a 10-year run with them, who are still going strong themselves. His solo album, Nowhere Left to Run, was produced by Chris Gates in 2019 and met with critical acclaim. His newest EP, called The Firebird Sessions, has spent the last 3 months on the Americana charts. It's been picked up by over 100 stations coast to coast. It's my great pleasure to welcome to the show, Mr. Phil Hurley.
Thank you so much. What an honor.
I'm excited to have you here. What are you going to start us off with?
I'm going to play one from that EP you just mentioned. This is one I wrote that's called Bordertown Girl. I kind of was looking at a big map of the state of Texas, and I've been all around for the last 14 years I've been living here, and I realized I've been to every little city in Texas except Laredo. So I wrote a song about a girl from Laredo.
Nice.
It sounds like this.
Cool.
On the south side of Laredo, where dreams go to die, there's a young girl with a heart full of hope, counting stars up in the sky. Most say she'll never get out of here, like so many before who tried. But she sees right through their jealous fears and all they try to hide. There must be some place in this world, some place where dreams can come unfurled, for a border town girl. There's a boy she's known since grade school, that says he wants to make her his bride, and she knows she's gonna break his heart and shatter all his pride. Her friends all say that she's crazy. They say she's dreaming her life away, but this town is full of too many souls that never got away. There must be more to this life than just to be somebody's wife. Praise a border town girl. Now her bags are packed and she's leaving, though her daddy doesn't know. It's more than he'll ever understand, but she knows she has to go. And fear is riding beside her as they cross that county line. She's never been is far from home, but her heart tells her it's time. It's time to spread her wings and fly. No time to stop and wonder why. No more Bordertown girl. No more Bordertown girl. No more Bordertown girl. On the south side of Laredo, where dreams go to die, there's a young girl with a heart full of hope, counting stars up in the sky. Thank you. Nice little story, right?
Lovely.
Kind of Born to Run, but for a girl from Texas.
Yeah, that's neat. To, I mean, John Prine, one of his best songs ever is, Angel from Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
And that's written from, I love when writers do that.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd ever tried that one on before, but it didn't feel inauthentic,
So, but that's on the EP.
It is, yeah.
That's charting right now.
Yeah, I really love the version of it too. It's got kind of a weird '80s. It feels like the left off the Fast Times at Ridgemont High soundtrack or something.
Nice.
It's got this kind of '80s feel to it that's fun.
Nice. We were both there then, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad because you grew up on the East Coast like me.
I did, yeah.
We were right around the same time.
Yep.
So we were all aware of you guys, and MTV was still a really a
such a thing,
music-oriented thing still at that point.
For sure.
Oh, the Syd Barrett thing. I love the Syd Barrett. I'm a big Floyd, even the early years, and I got you this because the Gigolo Aunts. It was based on a Syd Barrett song,
yeah.
The Gigolo Aunts.
Oh my God,
and,
that is incredibly
cool. I got this from an artist like at a street thing on the weekend, and I was really fascinated with it. And I was like, "This is a Mojo item."
That is super.
And she
cool.
gave it to me.
Really?
And I can't think of her name, and I'm bumming out. I know you. Anyway,
wow.
So I was like,
"Yeah, I'd be delighted,
I've
man.
had
Look at this cool thing. That is so cool."
I had it for like a year, and it's like I look at it, gives me joy. But I was like, this is for somebody else.
That
and then
is so cool.
I knew it was going to be for you.
When we were playing a show, you mentioned we were on tour with the Lemonheads in probably '94, playing at the. We were in New York City. I can't remember the name of the ballroom. Beautiful ballroom, and the dressing rooms were kind of down a narrow staircase down in this basement. And security was like, "Look, this guy wants to come say hello to you." And we had just walked off stage, sweaty, and this guy comes down with this kind of portly English gentleman with like one of those jackets with little patches on the elbows, and we're like, David Gilmour? And he had flown in during the course of a Pink Floyd tour between Toronto and D.C. and came to New York specifically to see us because he had played bass on and produced the song Gigolo Aunt.
Yes.
And so he was lovely. He hung out for the rest of the night and drank all of our beer and told us stories about, playing in Pompeii and Syd Barrett stories. And he just couldn't have been nicer or just more. He wanted to share with us, which was really unique. It was really an honor.
That is an honor. I mean, geez Louise, David Gilmour is like, I don't know. If that's not God, it's like,
in a way, I look back now,
like,
maybe I was just wrapped up in my own business. I don't know. Enough at the time, I was like, yeah, that's cool. And now I look back, I'm like, no, that was really cool.
But I went to Neil Young's house. My, Casey Crowley, my ex-wife, and she had the same management as Neil Young's management. Wow. So she did the Bridge School benefit.
Oh man!
And it was like, Lou Reed was there. Neil, obviously, Blues Traveler, Metallica. Smashing Pumpkins, Alanis Morissette, Casey Crowley. Yeah. It was crazy. And so, we all went to Neil's house.
Oh, man.
And I couldn't have been more comfortable around Neil Young.
Wow.
He was really, and you just looked you in the eye. I said something sort of funny, and he laughed, I just said, that means a lot to me if they somehow hear that, Mr.
There's
Neil
not
Young.
another name you could have mentioned other than Neil Young that would get a bigger reaction from me because I was like, like people, deadheads lose it to Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. Like in my early 20s, it was Neil or nothing for me. I had hair down to here and a gold top Les Paul and a tweed deluxe. And I used to have this state, I would tell people, anyone and would listen. I was like, man, there's just 3 things I got to do before I die. I want to learn how to scuba dive. I want to go up in a helicopter, and I want to meet Neil Young. Those were like my goals in life. And since then, I've gone over the Grand Canyon in a helicopter.
Nice.
I got certified to scuba dive off Catalina Island, and I've independently met Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
There's one guy left.
I can't get near him.
Well, there's still time.
I sure hope so. I just watched this whole interview with him and Rick Rubin. He's looking
that.
pretty old.
I know.
He's going to have to change his last name.
Well, no. He's forever young.
I know. I had a thing here in town for a while called the Year of the Horse, where we would do a night. I would come out with a rack harmonica and start with an acoustic, and then I'd add kind of a steel player, and we'd do the pretty songs like Only Love Can Break Your Heart and Harvest Moon, and then we'd ditch the steel player and play the heavy stuff. And I didn't want to get locked into doing a tribute act, but I love Neil Young that much.
Right,
so.
right. Nice. Okay, cool. Let's talk about your upbringing.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Describe it. You up by the border of Montreal, but you're in America. Was there a French were there a lot of French happening?
For sure. They started teaching us French in kindergarten. I had French every year of school, and I mean, looking back, I realized I'm a Canadian. You know, I mean, even though if we had 5 television stations, 3 of them were Canadian,
right?
And all of the radio, like we were raised on Canadian rock,
right?
You know, because that's just what we heard. And so I mean, I remember we had one station from New York City, and it felt like it was beaming in from another planet. You know, because it's a long ways away. I mean, it was a solid 8 hours north of New York.
It's so weird because I lived 45 minutes from New York, so I had all the New York radio. You know, WPLJ.
Oh yeah, classic.
There was a commercial that was animated that WPLJ rocks, and it was like and they had this like it was the Who and the Doors and Zeppelin, which was just like. You know, to me, as I was coming of age and discovering rock and roll, those records were so important. And the East Coast radio was, how I was getting them.
I was lucky enough because I was a 5th kid, so I had all of my older siblings' records. And so there was Zeppelin, there was Beatles, there was Stones, there was Stevie Wonder, there was the Animals, like everything side by side. But the Canadian radio, looking back, they were hip to things that were current in England the way a lot of American stations were. So we were hearing Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, The Jam, The Clash, The Buzzcocks, and like that stuff. That was the first stuff that really lit me up. Like I really, we were big Anglophiles, like, and that's why when we got an English deal early on in Gigolo Aunts, that's all that mattered to us. All we wanted to do was go to England. And then years later, meeting guys and like early on I knew like the Jayhawks guys and the Sunvolt. What was Uncle Tupelo, and they're the ones who turned me on to Americana, like from Graham Parsons and the Byrds, and I went backwards to Merle Haggard and Johnny Cash, but country music was far from my radar when I was little. You know,
right? Me too. By the way, like I think like the first time I ever like Charlie Daniels maybe was like that. The Devil Went Down to Georgia was probably a good cross, and I had Musician magazine, and I. Got the one with Willie on the cover, and I was really fascinated with Willie. I think it was like 81 or 2 or something like that, and he had just got busted, and like they took all his stuff.
He's an American treasure. I mean, he just crosses every line. And I saw him finally when I was living in LA for a while. I saw him at the Hollywood Bowl, and I was just unprepared. Like he just came out and just destroyed. It was like, oh, you want to hear me play guitar tonight? And he was like Django Reinhardt that night. It was just magnificent, man. I love Willie.
Yeah, everybody loved Willie, but that's awesome. How did it? So you start playing like from day one, and by the time you're 8, the band is going. Your brother's 13.
Yeah, much to my brother's chagrin. I mean, I don't think he wanted his 8-year-old brother hanging around, but I could sing in tune. You know, I was obsessed with music. We were just, we were such huge music fans that really, I never really had a plan B. I started playing in bands when I was 8, and then by the time a couple years later, my brother started playing more with kids his age, and I started playing with kids my age. But then we got back together again, when I was probably 15, 16, and he was in college. And we started Gigolo Aunts. I was 5 years younger than everybody else. I was still in high school, and those guys were in college. But we were the only band in Potsdam that just decided to play our own music. We started writing, and the clubs didn't want us to. They were like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You have to play, Grateful Dead covers. And you're like, we're not going to, but we could fill a room. So like they begrudgingly started giving us gigs.
Wow.
And we were the classic big fish in a small pond. We thought we were a big deal because we sold out of our cassette tapes in Potsdam, New York, But one of the other guitar player, Dave Gibbs, had lived briefly in Boston in the 80s, and he came back with great records by groups like Dump Truck and Big Dipper and a band called O Positive, and we saw when we also had we were aware of Till Tuesday, who had just had hits, and so we knew that there was a fertile scene there. And it's funny to think that we grew up in New York but decided to go to Boston instead of New York. It seemed a little more approachable, but we were there for such a great time. I mean, just as we got there, you had the Pixies, the Throwing Muses, the Morphine, the Lemonheads, Mighty Mighty Boss Tones, Dinosaur Jr. were coming in.
Did you interact with Morphine?
Mark was a good friend. I knew Mark's. Yeah, I mean, I was notorious as a little kid for jumping up on stage with anyone, whether invited or not. And as was Dana, the sax player from Morphine. So we met many times. Like, oh, you again, huh? Like, because we just neither one of us could stay off stage.
That's funny.
No, they were. I mean, there was a club called the Middle East. It was a Middle Eastern restaurant. They had this back room where they would do belly dancing. And Morphine, we had played shows with Treat or Right, which was Mark's band before Morphine. We used to open for them when I was 18 years old. Wow. And when they broke up, Mark was kind of down and out, and he would just be kind of at the bar. He was kind of a barfly, Bukowski kind of character. But then they started rehearsing in that back room. It was like, what is that? It was that low guitar and that sax sound. And, I mean, I was really in the right place for all of that. And the Pixies, too. I saw the Pixies for the first time in Hoboken at Maxwell's to maybe 50 or 60 people.
Wow.
And to this day, I've told this story too many times, I was unprepared because I knew of them, but their music scared me to the point where I thought I was going to get sick. Like I had that salivating feeling in my mouth where I ran to the bathroom thinking I was going to literally puke, and I had to go back and watch more. It was like I've never been affected by a band more than that. First time I saw the Pixies.
Getting the chills.
Yeah, it was mind blowing. They were it was so intentionally dissonant.
How about what's Black Francis like?
I was only around him a couple of times. We were all kind of in awe of him, and he my funniest memory of him is the cool studio in town was called Fort Apache, and that's where all those bands were making their records. Dinosaur Jr. and the Lemonheads and Buffalo Tom and the Pixies, and they would have a big Christmas party. And you remember, I was a kid, I wasn't even 20 yet, exactly. But I was at this Christmas party and maybe had a little bit too many. And again, I was trying to sit in with everyone. It's like, dude, you're not sitting in with the Throwing Muses, But we had all heard legends that Charlie had bought a big yellow Cadillac, and like none of us had any money, and I didn't have a car,
Right.
And I finally a friend was like, okay, Phil, you're drunk. I'm getting you out of here. And we walk out in the parking lot, and there's Charlie getting into his big yellow Cadillac, and I just have these hazy drunken memories of like driving down Commonwealth Avenue and looking over, and he was just smiling at me, like giving me these evil Charlie grins. Like, but I never really had a lot. I ended up giving a guitar lesson to Joey Santiago, the guitar player, years later, but that's another story.
Wow. Wow, you really got to be in the middle of such a cool time in music.
That was
in
a
this
fun
country,
scene. It really was a fun scene.
And it was all that stuff became national, and it's like there's definitely. There's scenes that have been Athens and stuff that you might have heard a couple people or so, but they had for a long time just a scene that had some probably similar to Austin.
Yep.
But that scene, almost like Seattle in a weird way.
True.
With the amount of talent that all broke out from a spot.
I moved from Boston to Seattle.
Okay.
And it was I moved there in about 95, 96, and it was interesting because Seattle had gotten overrun at that point with musicians, and so even though I was coming off being a pretty successful couple of years, the door was locked. Like they didn't want any more folks in the club, and it took a while.
No room at the
end. And I'd be out in the clubs and I'd know hey, that's Tad, and that's the dudes from Soundgarden, and that's the guy. You knew who they were,
right?
But it wasn't until I kind of met one friend who invited me in, and then it ended up being a great chapter as well. I really enjoyed living there, but it took a while because the other thing also people don't unless you moved there, you probably didn't recognize this. Drugs did really a lot of damage to that town. When I moved out there, everyone had lost a brother or a sister or a boyfriend or girlfriend. There was a lot of people who died in that town.
Right.
And that, I feel really blessed that in Boston, I wasn't a Boy Scout, but we're all alive.
Right.
For the most part.
Well, right. Well, but the junk, heroin is a thing. And that definitely I know fueled some of the energy that happened in there. But so you get to be a part of all that too.
Yeah.
It was a little post, I guess.
It was. Yeah, but there was still a lot of music going on in that town too, and it was the perfect little ecosystem where you had a great local radio station. Mm-hmm. great local record stores, local record labels, and bands. So like the labels were signing local bands, putting out their records in the cool store, and they were getting played on the radio. So everything like fed into it. Like the folks came out to see them in the clubs because they heard them on the radio, and they bought their records in the store. And it was a truly like healthy ecosystem. You know, it all like fit hand in glove. And so I got to watch a lot of bands. Like, you know, I had a band with, if you remember the Presidents of the United States, I had a band with Chris Ballou from the Presidents, and there were these young kids who used to drive down from Bellingham, which is a college town on the border, to open for us. They were called Death Cab for Cutie. I mean, Ben from Death Cab worked the cash register at my local record store. You know, they were just the local kids. Or I mean, I remember the Modest Mouse guys being around and playing just little all ages shows. And Seattle just kept, every year there was another one that stepped up. You know, it was pretty amazing. Like, it was just it was competitive, but it was also just such fertile soil. There was so many clubs, there was so much music going on that it just felt like, and the opportunities just kept coming too. You know, like people, I don't know why the industry kept giving breaks to bands from Seattle, but boy, there was a lot of bands that got out of there.
Because they made money.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
You know, I mean, that's what they put the money where the money was.
That's true.
I kind of witnessed what I call the end of the record label from the inside when Casey was on Atlantic, and it was the end. And so, like you were saying that. The record, the radio stations were still where you would discover music, and then you'd go to the store. And this is the end of that time.
Right, it's true. It definitely does feel like it's over. I mean, I was part of that when I played with that girl Tracy Bonham. That was such
She had a huge
an anatomy of a one-hit wonder, because she had never had a band, but she got signed by Chris Blackwell from Island Records at like her second show, and her record sold 1 million copies, and they didn't even put her next record out.
Right.
You know, it's like it was just it was the perfect example. But, you know, there's nothing really like the power of MTV anymore, because we were playing, when I first started playing with her, we played to literally no one. We were out on the road, and like there would be zero paid. Right. And the moment she got A-listed on MTV, there were thousands. You know, it was like literally overnight, and and it didn't last very long. But it was really interesting to see. And now I don't really know, how do you get to that many people in one? You know, there's it used to be if you're on the cover of Spin magazine or Rolling Stone magazine or something. I don't know that there's
It'd be one thing that would set somebody into the. It was, and it just took. They went on whatever show.
I don't know what it is now. I mean, I'd say Saturday Night Live, but I don't even know if that has the power that it once does. You know, it's a. I guess you just got to grow a smaller market or a smaller audience base.
Well, there's so much to choose from.
That's true.
You know, some people gave up on cable a long time ago, so like they're not even watching TV. Maybe they're watching Saturday Night Live on something else, but you know,
it's been a real learning curve for me, because I've been on so many different record labels, and I've been in so many bands, and but putting out this latest EP and doing it all on my own has been a real learning curve, and like learning how it's done now, and having to pander to Spotify and care about how many streams I got and stuff. I never did any.
We're feeling a little bit of that too, but I want to talk more about. Let's play a second song.
All right. Well, let's try this one. This is a sweet one. I'll play you a sweet one.
All right.
So I was playing in the South Austin Moonlighters, and my other guitar player, Chris, was like, "Man, too many sad songs, man. Your life is fine. Write a happy song." So I wrote this one, and I had just started dating a girl from Austin, Texas, and so I wrote her this song. It's called "There's Something About a Girl from Texas," and I'm delighted to say we just had our first wedding anniversary, so it worked.
Nice.
Well, I wasn't born in the Lone Star State, and I never thought I'd call it home. From coast to coast and town to town, my heart, it had to roam. Yeah, but now I'm starting to see the light. The sky is starting to clear. There's a secret only locals know. Oh, it's something they hold dear. They know there's something about a girl from Texas that makes a man's heart feel at ease. You'll forget about all of your exes, 'cause she's the only one you'll ever need. Well, she's the only one you'll ever need. She rides fast horses through green pastures, with her hair flying in the breeze. not afraid to roll her sleeves up. She's got scrapes on both her knees. Yeah, but watch as every man's head turns when she walks through the door. Whoa, every little thing about her is everything you're looking for. They know there's something about a girl from Texas that makes a man's heart feel at ease. You'll forget about all of your exes, 'cause she's the only one you'll ever need. She's the only one you'll ever need. So if you're ever lucky enough to find one, a Texas girl of your own, be kind, don't try to bind her. Give her plenty of space to roam. Well, make sure that you treat her right and count your lucky stars. Hold her head close to your chest at night in those early morning hours. Because there's something about a girl from Texas that makes a man's heart feel at ease. You'll forget about all of your exes, 'cause she's the only one you'll ever need. Oh, she's the only one you'll ever need. Yeah, now she's the only one you'll ever need. Oh, 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 oh. My girl from Texas. Oh, 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 oh. That's that for a happy little number, huh?
That was a great happy little number. And you married the girl.
I did. She's a good one.
You gotta have a good gal. I mean, it's tricky in the music business.
I definitely, I've been accused by my girl now. Apparently I had a bad picker. I definitely picked some of the wrong ones along the way. But no, I'm delighted. When I first met her, I was kind of seeing the wrong girl still. And I met this girl, and I was like, ooh, I know she's really special. And we hadn't really started dating yet. She sat me down early one morning. She said, meet me for coffee, like 8 o'clock in the morning at some place across town. And she sat me down and she said, you don't have to date me, but you're dating the wrong girl. And I was like, you're right. And
that's cool,
I kinda
man.
Cleaned up my life
Wow.
and got my act. And our birthdays are both the first week of October. And I've been friends with the Counting Crows guys for a million years. And they were coming through town on my birthday at the Moody. And I asked her if she would be my date to go see the Counting Crows. And that was, 8 years ago now. We've been together ever since.
That's a sweet story.
Yeah, she's a good one.
Cool, man.
And we sing together, too, which is great. You know, she's a really wonderful singer.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was down at Green Hall yesterday. I had her sitting in on a bunch of tunes.
Great.
We did the Graham Parsons benefit together this year, singing a duet and stuff.
Oh,
which
yeah,
was great.
Polly helped you out along
Yes.
the way, didn't she?
A lot. Polly is a big part of why I live in Austin.
Polly Parsons
Yeah.
is great figure here, and her father was Graham Parsons.
Yeah. So I had a band, a real good singing band in L.A. called Stone Honey, and we'd gotten a big record deal and all this crap. And the label wanted us to move to Nashville, and they were going to pay for us to move to Nashville. And so on our way to Nashville, we came through Austin. This would have been 2008, and played one relatively insignificant show at Momo's.
Yeah.
But then that night, friends
a
took
great
us out.
club.
Yeah, it was. I missed that place, but it was Valentine's Day, and so friends took us out that night to the Broken Spoke, and Jesse Dayton was playing, who's since become a dear friend.
Great.
And I had never
Jesse.
seen anything like that. People were all dressed up because it was Valentine's Day, and I'd never seen Two Step In, and I'd never seen
Right.
dance hall, and I was so.
That's how I felt when I went in the
was blown
Spoke,
away,
too.
Yeah.
I
felt like I
didn't
could
have that
been-
in Connecticut and New York.
No, I felt like to me it was like I could have been at Preservation Hall in New Orleans or at the Blue Note in New York. It was like an important part of American culture. You know, I was like, man, this is special. So that next night, friends of ours said, like, look, if you guys play a house concert, we'll feed you dinner. And being broke musicians, we did.
Yeah.
And while we were playing, this beautiful red-haired girl was like taking notes and making phone calls, and it was Polly.
Right.
And she convinced us. She said, look, what are you guys doing tomorrow? you have to come to this party. And I went, well, we're really supposed to be on the road. And she said, no, cancel. You're coming to this party. And so she took us to a house party up in North Austin that was like the best party you've ever been to. Like, pancakes and cold brew coffee and people sharing
smoky treats.
Maybe, smoky treats. Barbecue. Yeah. But we were at Eddie Wilson's house. And Eddie, as you probably know, owned the Armadillo World headquarters and owned Threadgills. And so they set us up, and we just started playing in his living room, and people just instantly started dancing, having fun. And Polly came forward. She had found an original poster of when Graham had played the Armadillo. And in front of the whole party said, like, Eddie Wilson, I'd like to present this gift of when my father played your joint from me and Stone Honey. It was like, we met you 12 hours ago. And he just took us in. He wrote us a check that day, a blank check, and he said, fill it out for what you need, boys. And when we came back to Texas, he gave us a residency at Threadgills, and he's such a special guy. And we would just go up and hang with him on Sundays and sit around and kind of roll him up and just and let him tell us stories, because he's like Mark Twain or something. He speaks in witticisms, and he knows every bit of Texas history and every bit of Austin history, and it was such a special way. We met him, and we also met a guy named Lewis Myers, and Lewis had owned the Liberty Lunch and was the executive, one of the founders of South by.
He helped Casey.
And so meeting those guys, I felt like we really got to know why Austin is Austin, where Austin came from. It was really a special history lesson.
Totally. That's those names. Louis J. He was one of they started South by, and then he went and started that LMNOP, and that's
Folk Alliance as well. Yep.
Exactly. And he was just as cool and down to earth.
He was a dear friend.
He just was in it for all the right reasons.
I agree. Yep. I miss him terribly, and I know he had a lot of friends along the way, but I'm very fortunate that I was one of his last, and I really spent a lot of time with him as he moved back here, and we had a lot of good times together, and I miss him daily.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for talking about Eddie Wilson too, because we haven't had enough people talk about him, and he's just I saw him recently. He's just a sweetheart, and important.
Agreed. Yeah, he's pretty private these days, but he's a special cat.
I seen him at a Pack show.
All right,
at the Saxon, and that impressed me for the Pack.
Yeah.
I was like, you guys got Eddie Wilson coming out to your show now.
That's great.
Let's talk about the South Austin Moonlighters.
Yeah. Oh, what a joy. I was just the things like that band Stone Honey should have been a success, and it just didn't go the way it should have, and it was kind of fizzling to a sad end. And we were doing our favorite South by Southwest show was always one that Shyla Morrow would do at
Shy.
She would always do her Sin City thing at Maria's Taco Express. And that was before we even moved here, that was the gig we wanted to be on, because it would be Mike Stinson and Jesse Dayton and like all the bands we really looked up to. And so one year we were doing it, and the Mother Truckers were there, and Dead Man was there, and Sherman was there. And we were all hanging out having fun, and we were like, wouldn't it be fun if we did something on the side where we were just playing for the fun? We weren't trying to get a record deal. We weren't trying to, it was just for the joy of playing. And Lonnie Trevino, who was then in Dead Man, had the audacity to reach out to Joe at the Saxon, and he gave us a month of Tuesdays. And it started out, there was too many of us on stage. I think it was Stephen Collins from Dead Man, Aaron Beavers from Sherman, Josh C. from the Mother Truckers, Phil Bass on drums, who came in from Monty Montgomery's band, Lonnie and me. And we're all trying to get a turn in, and it was a little bit of a traffic jam. And bit by bit, it kind of weeded its way down to Josh, Lonnie, Phil, and I, and it got pretty mean pretty quick. It was a good band, and our first record we did live at the Saxon Pub, and it just once we started, at first we were just playing other people's songs. We were playing just fun covers. But once we started adding our own songs to the mix, it was like, we got a tiger by the tail here.
Right.
And I was in that band for 10 years and was really proud that, we survived some tough changes in personnel, and they've done that again and are still making great music. And we worked. I feel like sometimes we were a little disconnected from the Austin scene and community, but that was mostly because we were playing 180 shows a year.
Right.
We were out working all the time, and we wanted to be more of a part of Austin and be, out supporting our friends and stuff like that. But man, we worked. We really and made a bunch of records. And again, I never felt like it kind of went where I think we all hoped that it went, but I enjoyed the journey.
It's so hard to qualify a thing like that.
Yeah.
It's because you for 10 years, you played music that not only gave you guys joy, but it gave 180 shows a year people joy. That you had crowds, that you were, you know, live shows. I did a lot of live theater. The part of what's neat about them is if no one's rolling any tape, that's all you get.
Yes, that's true.
And you had to be there.
Yeah, it just as COVID hit and we were all kind of locked away from each other, I had a big creative spurt where I wrote a bunch of new material, and I just kind of realized I don't know that this is music for that band. I think maybe this has got to be something new, and so it felt like a logical point to step off because they would have enough time to regroup and regather with whoever they wanted to replace me with.
Right.
But it just felt like it was kind of time. I've always been in bands, as we've talked about. I love being in bands, and I've been in bands my whole life. But the downside of being in a band is when it breaks up, nobody knows who you are.
Right.
You know? So I've been trying. I've been trying a little bit more now, and I feel like I'm a baby learning my first steps because I'm trying to create my own brand, and that's not something I've ever really attempted, and it's got its own challenges for sure.
Absolutely, and like you said earlier, we started talking about that the business is entirely different now.
Yes.
And so it's EPs or singles.
Yep.
And then there's a lot. The kids are putting videos with their singles, which is smart.
Yes.
And some of them are putting credits on, which as us as filmmakers, we're like, hey, this is nice, because we got camera people in here and people in the booth that are doing a lot of that lifting to make sure this thing is good, and they get their name on the thing.
That is great.
They never used to put names on videos.
No, it's true.
Put the director maybe,
right,
and who wrote it maybe. That's it.
Yeah.
That's just a progression, and so there's some things that are kind of cooler, and some things that are and trickier.
It's true.
But you've had success now.
I mean, again, like you said, success is a hard thing to measure. But I at that time when I had the idea of doing this, it was we were all locked away from each other. I remember I found the notebook. I kind of sat down and how, as we do, we kind of visualize or kind of try to set goals for ourselves. And I realized I've kind of knocked a lot of those goals down. I've done a lot of the things that I had aspired to. So it's time for a new set of goals. I actually did because I was pleased with the success of this Firebird Sessions EP. We've already cut another 5, and I'm getting mixed up. So I'm ready to have another release as the new year turns. I figured I'd wait until this one had kind of completely run its course. But I think the next EP is going to be even better than the first one. So
let me ask you this. I'm sure it will. I mean, you forget how progression works. But let me ask you this. So you're charting, and you're being played on a lot. How is that affecting sales?
Well, I mean, I think what I see more is streams, and which is great. I mean, it's great to have lots of streams. I don't know that streams really turn into anything. I mean, I guess that means that people are listening. That's what I want people to listen. I don't know. I mean, I've sold some records. I mean, I actually did print up CDs and I sell them at the shows and stuff like that. And I do see some people buying it. Like I have it up on Bandcamp where you can buy the record. And it's been.
Do people do it?
Dozens.
It's not. It's not huge numbers. It's too easy to get it for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. Though I was pretty amazed. I mean, because I didn't play the Spotify game. I've never been a Spotify subscriber. I recognize
I don't use it.
I know plenty of people who really enjoy it, and I also recognize the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going to go back. People aren't going to be like, you know what, this is wrong. Let's not use it. I mean, let's just embrace it at this point. But it was pretty fun to see. When I put that record out, I was like, holy cow! I mean, I was, every song on the EP was getting 6,000 to 10,000 streams a day.
That's amazing.
And I was like, wow, people are really paying attention. And that was really gratifying. I mean, it was definitely instant gratification. And for the amount of effort that I put into creating this record, it really made me feel good. And I've gotten, the part that made me the happiest is that the friends and the musicians who I respect and care about, they're the ones who reached out to me and said, dude, I really like this. And it's like, okay, good.
I'm glad you put it that way.
My friends liked it.
I literally had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I was like, I have a few artist friends that if they say, hey, man, That's good.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear it from. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care if a million people like that sucks.
Yeah.
No, you don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's nice. That is gratifying, And I love one of the things I missed, like back in the Gigolo Aunts and Tracy Bonham, and I played with that band Fountains of Wayne for a while too. We did a lot of festival stuff, and I loved playing festivals because backstage everyone's equal. Like we're all playing the same spot. We're all, okay, you're later on in the day, but like we're all in this for the same reason. And so you end up hanging out and making new friends and seeing these guys, and then you see them again, like, hey, we played that thing together. And with my new band, we're starting to get invited to be part of some festivals. And if any of you are watching and you would like us to play your festival, the answer is yes. That stuff. First of all, you're getting out to other people, other audiences, other folks who didn't necessarily come to see you, but who get exposed to what your music is. But I love the camaraderie. I miss that part because that was one of the things I felt was a bit of a sacrifice for the hard work we did with the Moonlighters. We were out pounding the pavement so hard everywhere else that we didn't get to share time with I know you're friends with Madame Radar.
Yeah.
And I look at the way that those guys are creating the community with their friends.
Yeah.
And they're playing shows together with their friends. That's what we did when I was young.
That's how the pack evolved.
Yes, exactly. And I miss that part of it. I really do. I miss the sharing, and I'm hoping to get back to a little bit more of that community sense of it all instead, because you can get to the point where you're so obsessed with being out working and doing as much as you can that you can get a little disconnected from that. And I've been enjoying with this group trying to find my way back towards the community again.
Great. We're really close to the end here, but I'd just like you to talk a little bit about Jimmy LaFave and what it was like to, because we have folks obviously that him and his name comes up, but you had a pretty good inside seat.
I did. We mentioned Folk Alliance. So my band Stonehoney got invited to be part of Folk Alliance. And we were like, we're not a folk band, we're a rock band. But that first time we went to Folk Alliance, it just worked.
Right.
And we found a whole new audience that really enjoyed what we did. And there were these two gentlemen who had been following us around. We were in Memphis. And every gig we did, they were there. I was like, who are these stalkers, And finally they came up and introduced themselves. And it was Fred Remmer, who owned Cedar Creek Studios here in South Austin, and Jimmy. And they were just starting a record label called Music Road Records. Mm-hmm. And they said, look, we really like what you guys are doing. We're hearing that you're talking about moving to Austin. If you want to move to Austin, we have a label. We'd love to sign you guys. We'd love to put out a record for you. And so it took a little while to make that happen. But sure enough, we made our first record at Cedar Creek. And actually, it was kind of fun, too, because I mentioned a band called Uncle Tupelo.
Yeah.
I was a big Uncle Tupelo fan. And their last record was called Anodyne. And they recorded it all live with no overdubs at Cedar Creek. Mm-hmm. And we hired Ken Coomer, who was the drummer from Uncle Tupelo and Wilco, to come and play drums on this record. Right. And we cut it all live. And we had Earl Poolball playing piano. Right. And we had Lewis Myers playing steel. And anything on the record was live. No overdubs, no tuning, any of that stuff. So we made that record and we toured. And we used to play a lot of shows with Jimmy and his band. But as Stonehoney kind of fell apart, Jimmy called and he said, hey, do you want to play some guitar for me? And I was like, absolutely I do. And the thing most people, any of us who have survived being in Jimmy's band will share, he didn't send me any music, there were never any rehearsals, and there's never a set list. You get on stage and he starts a song and he'll play it one time through, and by the second time it comes to that, through the progression, you better be ready to contribute.
Wow.
And if he played it in G last night, it might be in C sharp this night. So he always kept you on your back heels, and you're always listening. And also, you never knew who was going to be on the other side of the stage. So like the first gig I played with him, it was Cindy Cashdollar. I was like, uh-oh. And then it might be Gerf Morlix, or it might be, you never knew who it was. So it's like, I got to be good tonight, and what it really taught me more than anything was how to listen, because he was such a beautiful, emotive singer that really I became conscious of like what my job was. It wasn't about notes or shred or anything. It was like, tell the story, sing the song, maintain that emotional content. And he would give you enough rope to hang yourself, because if you'd have a soloist on each side, and if you were over here, he'd go, he'd give you the nod, and that meant, okay, it's your turn. And you'd give it all you've had, and you've played every note you knew how to play, and he'd give you the nod again. You'd be like, ah! And you'd like, and he'd the well would be dry, and he'd give you a nod again. You're like, oh God!
Wow!
But it was a thrill to play with him, because you never knew where it was going to go. And every night he would just I mean, we did the Voice of America, which is a radio broadcast out of D.C. that goes out to, I don't know, millions of people.
Wow.
And we played 4 songs. One of them we had ever played before. Mm-hmm. That was Jimmy. He just kept you on your toes. And one other thing I'll share that it was just kind of fun about Jimmy is that he was always kind and lovely, but he was private. I never went to his home.
Wow.
He always traveled separately. But you had to be careful because anything, you do sound check and then you'd all have dinner together before the show. Anything that came up over dinner, he's listening and it's coming out over the mic that night. So it'd be like, well, so if Bill has diarrhea this week, it's like, whoa, dude, no. And so you really had to watch what you shared because we never had any dirt on him, but he would, one poor keyboard player was doing a lot of online dating at the time and he would find out who the girl in the audience he was dating was. So like, oh, so this girl right here is on a date. And it was like, oh man, he was a prankster in a way, But
wow.
It was a lot
I
of.
didn't know about that side of
boy.
him.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for telling us about that, man.
Yeah, we were all victims of that. It seemed like one guy each night was kind of under the bus, But he was a lovely.
Gotta keep it fresh.
The last thing I'll say about Jimmy is that when he passed, he was very private about his illness, and none of us really even knew that he was sick until he was gone. And my initial thought was, well, I never, as many years I knew him, I never got to know him any better than I did when I first did. And then I realized, yes, I did. It just wasn't what he said. He was a man of action, and the opportunities that he gave me, the number of times because of him, I was on stage with Arlo Guthrie doing "This Land Is Your Land." The number of times because of me that I got to, he gave me opportunities without asking or without talking about it. He just said, "Come on." Right. And suddenly I was there. And so I look back and it was his actions that for me spoke the loudest. And I miss him again. I miss him a lot. I miss his playfulness, and I miss his the joy that he would bring an audience to. It was wonderful to sit back and watch the people watch him.
Right. Right. Let's close you out and we'll say goodbye to the kids.
Yes. Let's do this one. This is kind of a fun one. This is another one from the record. So when we were all locked away from each other during COVID, my gal and I would take walks every night and just walking through the neighborhood in the empty streets of Hyde Park. And we were thinking about missing folks, missing our family and missing our friends. And we realized maybe there's some people we don't miss that much. And so I kind of off the cuff said, I don't miss you. Now you're gone. And she just without missing a beat said, I thought I would, but I was wrong. And I was like, okay, this one's done. It goes like this. For so long, we've been side by side. Many seasons turn, and the fire still burns. Lately it's been quite a bumpy ride. There's something I must confide. Oh, I don't miss you. Now you're gone. Well, I thought I would, but I was wrong. No, I don't miss the things you say, 'cause it was never about anything but you anyway. It ain't like I'll never see you again. No, I'm not angry. I'll still be your friend. But they say distance, oh, it makes the heart grow fonder. Yeah, so let's just stay apart a little longer. Oh, 'cause I don't miss you. And now you're gone. Well, I thought I would, but I was wrong. No, I don't miss the things you say, 'cause it was never about anything but you anyway. always wish you only the best. I hope you find some peace. I hope you get some rest. So don't feel slighted. Oh, if I don't pick up the phone, I can see it's you calling. I just wanna be alone. Yeah, 'cause I don't miss you. Now you're gone. Well, I thought I would, but I was wrong. No, I don't miss the stupid things you say. 'Cause it was never about anything but you anyway. Oh, no, it was never about anything but you anyway.
That was hot.
Yeah, a little
was
rock
that
and roll.
you call that a co-write?
No, I guess maybe I should. Yeah. I mean, she only came up with 2 lines, but
that's all we got for you. Awesome. Thank you again so much for being here,
my
Phil.
pleasure.
PhilHurley.com, I'm guessing.
PhilHurleyMusic.com.
Oh, Phil Hurley, PhilHurley. I hope you know how to spell music.com.
Yes.
Please also leave a like and subscribe if you like this. It's really helpful for us if you actually do that. I'm hoping some of you will do it. Great job, man. Thanks again.
Total pleasure. Thank you.